My beloved Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Okay, let's talk about, I want to give you guys my thoughts on the 2-0 victory over Getafe today. Now, listen, this was not a spectacular performance by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it was a solid performance. It was a somewhat improved performance, and I think it was very therapeutic in many ways. Considering where we were, I think it was really, really important to take these 3 points. And to leave some sort of a good taste in our mouth. Look, this is going to leave us 1 point behind Barça on the table, but we have a game in hand. So if we managed to win, to beat Valencia when we recover that match, that'll put us 2 points clear. So again, this was not a spectacular performance, but I think it was a good performance. And I want to give you guys my thoughts on it. By the way, I typically don't do these videos at night. I usually do them the following day, but I'm traveling to Switzerland tomorrow, so I wanted to make sure I give you guys my thoughts before I took off. I'm not going to have time to do it in the morning. But thanks for joining me. Let's talk about this somewhat therapeutic performance tonight, and I'll give you my comments and takeaways. All right, thanks for joining me. Let's get started. All right, Madridistas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the Getafe match, and I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, let's talk about the formation first. This was a sort of 4-4-2, but I would say kind of a fuzzy 4-4-2. Because, sometimes Brahim would go quite far up on the wing and it looked like a 4-3-3. But this was basically a double pivot. In defense, we had exactly what we expected. Fran Garcia on the left, Lucas Vázquez on the right, Rudiger and Asencio in the middle. And then we had a sort of double pivot with Fede and Ceballos, with Jude a little bit off to the left. And like I say, Brahim off to the right, and then Rodrigo and Kylian up front. So it was a sort of double pivot 4-4-2, but it was a little bit fuzzy. Like I say, sometimes Brahim would go quite far up the right wing. It looked like a 4-3-3. But I can't say that there were too many surprises there. So really nothing to comment in terms of the lineup. This is one of the type of formations that we've used many times this year. And with Rodrigo coming back from injury, I wasn't surprised to see him in the starting lineup. But the match, in terms of the match itself, most of the match was kind of what you would expect, right? It started, the first few minutes I thought were a bit slow, but we sort of started to get into gear. Real Madrid was on the front foot, keeping most of the possession. Getafe was playing a sort of mid to low block, trying to exploit the counter. This is, basically what you would expect when you play at home against more modest opposition. It had all the look and feel of traditional home matches for Real Madrid, so nothing really too surprising there. We did manage to create plenty of chances. This could have been a much more inflated scoreline. Mind you, Getafe could have scored as well. They hit the post 3 times, but we missed some absolute screamers. The first goal was a penalty converted by Jude. Now, in terms of whether or not it was a penalty, look, these things typically don't get called. But, if you notice, Rudiger was getting every single corner kick or sort of, ball going into the box. Rudiger was getting tackled and manhandled constantly. They didn't call it the first few times, but I think eventually there does come a point where I think the referees have to acknowledge it. It's not, like I say, refs typically will not call this sort of thing. But at some point you have to, because they were kind of all over. These things look like rugby tackles every time the ball went into the box, especially on Rudiger. Now, Jude converted the penalty, and I think it was phenomenal from a psychological standpoint. I think he's another one of those players that I think needs to recover confidence. And the more he plays, the more he scores, I think the better. I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't really like the stutter step in the penalty. That's not something I really like when players do that. A lot of players do. Bruno Fernandes does it a lot at Man U, and Messi. There are plenty of players. Neymar used to do it as well. A lot of players do it. I don't like it. I tend to like players that sort of kick penalties very forcefully with a lot of conviction and a lot of confidence. But I do think, I've never seen Jude kick one like this, and I do think it speaks to his sort of psychological state right now, because I think that little stutter step, I don't know, To me, it kind of projects a little bit of insecurity and lack of confidence. It's not something I like to see, and I was surprised that Jude did it. In any case, he did score, and I think this is very uplifting from a psychological standpoint. And I hope he goes back to just kicking the penalties the way he usually does. The second goal was, a wonderful finish by Kylian. Ironically, he converted the most difficult of the chances he had, because he had about 6 or 7 really good chances. And the one he converted, I thought, was probably the hardest one of all. But there was an enormous sense of relief in the stadium. And I mean, I can't describe this to you guys. There's obviously everyone talks about the Kylian situation. That's all anybody's talking about around here. And people feel quite strongly about it. But it was wonderful to see the Bernabeu supporting Kylian and chanting his name, and really, committed to bringing his confidence back and giving him more time and more rope. And I thought it was a really positive thing. And when he scored, there was just this incredible sense of relief in the stadium. You could feel it, and a sense of relief on the part of Kylian himself. So it was very, very good to see him score. Like I say, he could have scored another 4 or 5 because he had some absolute screamers. In the second half, Jude came off and Arda Güler came in. Now, you might remember in my last video, we were talking about the injuries, and I said that don't be surprised if the next injury is Jude, because he works way too hard. I mean, the demands that he puts on his body every single match is incredible. He really does make a monumental effort every time he plays, and I've been very worried about that. Now, fortunately, this wasn't anything serious. By all accounts, he just felt dizzy, and they were trying to, just take a precaution. Apparently, there was some dizziness, and they thought they would rest him. There was no need to force the issue. And to be quite frank, I'm very happy to see Jude rest for 45 minutes, because given the way he plays, I do think he does need a rest from time to time. In the second half, there were, plenty of chances to score more goals. Getafe, like I say, they, on the counter, they didn't have too many chances, but they did hit the post 3 times. But you never had the feeling, despite Getafe generating some chances, you just never really had the feeling that they were going to take over the match. So I think that their chances were sort of isolated, but they never felt like a threatening side during the course of the match. In the 66th minute, Rodrigo came off and Luka Modric came in. Nothing surprising here. Rodrigo's coming off an injury. Obviously, he wasn't going to play the 90 minutes. I wouldn't read anything into this. I think Rodrigo had a decent match. Really, nothing serious to worry about there. I think it was just a matter of getting him back into playing form. In terms of kind of broad observations, there are a couple of positive takeaways that I do want to mention. First of all, especially relative to the Liverpool match, for those of you that saw my previous video, first of all, I thought we were much better in transition. So when we recovered balls in front of our box, we got the ball to the wing and we got the ball forward much more quickly and efficiently, certainly than the Anfield match. That was very frustrating to the way we played against Liverpool. But I thought we were able to get the ball out. Our transition play was very good, very fast. And I noticed that a lot of this had to do with very, very good passing on the part of Fede and Ceballos. Their long ball, they passed very well short, but they had some very, very good long passes. And I think that really helped to kind of get us to flow into attack, transition quickly into attack. Another thing that I noticed was that our passing in the final third was a lot better. One of the complaints that I had in the Anfield match was that we were very sloppy with the ball in the final third. We would lose the ball very quickly once we got into that final third, and it kept us from ever really creating chances. That was not the case here. I think that there were great combinations up front. There was a lot of quick passing, a lot of 1-2s, and we created a lot of danger. So I think the connection between the forwards was very good. The passing was very good, and on the back of that, we created a lot of chances. So I think that was another positive takeaway. In terms of player comments, let me just say Ceballos. I'll talk about Ceballos briefly. He's not a player that I have massively endorsed in the past, but I do think he had a very, very good game tonight. Okay, he passed the ball very, very well. He recovered balls. He defended very well. Like I say, his long passing was great. So I think Ceballos had a really, really good. He was one of the better players on the pitch. One thing I will mention though is he does tend to take a little bit too much risk sometimes. Sometimes he'll dribble in very dangerous situations. He did it a couple of times tonight. or he'll thread a very, very accurate pass. He'll thread a ball between two sort of pressing forwards of Getafe. And, this time the passes went through, but sometimes he does take a little bit of risk with some of the dribbling and passing in defensive positions. But overall, I think he had a very good game. Okay, Fede, I need to mention Fede as well because, like I say, I think he had a fantastic match. He had some beautiful runs on the right-hand side. He recovered a ton of balls. And like I say, he's making a lot of these beautiful diagonal passes to the wings. He found Kylian on a couple of these beautiful long diagonal passes. The type of thing that Toni Kroos used to do for us and that had sort of disappeared from our repertoire this year. I see Fede is much more active trying to make those long balls, those long switches of play that catch the other team off guard. So I think Fede had a very good game, and I really like the way his game is evolving, and he's now adding those long balls to his repertoire, so that was really encouraging. Okay, we need to talk about Asencio. This kid, okay, this is no longer a coincidence. We're about 3 or 4 matches in, and this kid is very, very impressive. I'm really impressed by the way he plays. He never seems to be in a pickle, and I think a lot of this has to do with his placement on the pitch. He's young, but he's very, very good in terms of knowing where to be. His placement on the pitch is very, very good. So you rarely see him scrambling out of position or kind of in trouble because his placement on the pitch is very, very good. He gets to balls quickly. He's very good on the one-on-ones. I thought Asencio had a very good game, and he's giving me really, really good vibes. This is a great discovery. And like I say, this is no longer a coincidence because we're 3 or 4 matches in and this kid has played really, really well. So that's very, very positive. Okay, let's talk about Jude just very quickly. Look, Jude and the work rate issue. Every match I say the same thing. Jude's work rate is unbelievable. He leaves everything on the pitch every time he plays. But I thought today he was really excellent in that first half. I mean, his passing was great. He was connecting very well. He was connecting the lines, getting the ball to the forwards really, really well. And like I say, I'm very happy that he rested in that second half. There's no reason to force the issue. He's one of the players that gives so much every time he plays. So I'm very happy that he got to rest that second half. Okay, Fran Garcia, again, I need to mention him too because I think he had a really good game as well. Look, at this point, it looks like Fran is the choice over Mendy. Mendy had a really disastrous performance at Anfield. I wasn't surprised to see Fran Garcia start, but I think he had a very good game. He was very dynamic. He ran a lot. He was very quick. He ran up, quite a bit and got involved in the attack, put a few balls into the box, but I think defended quite well. He seemed quite active and intervened a lot in play, but it was encouraging to see Fran. I thought he had a very good game. Rudiger and Lucas Vázquez, I'm just going to say they both had a pretty solid match. I mean, maybe nothing to write home about, but a very solid match. Rudiger, of course, provoking the penalty. Brahim and Rodrigo, I think, also played well. They tried their best. Dribbled a lot. Were a little bit unlucky in terms of, that final third, getting that final shot off. They didn't really have too many clear chances, but I think they both played quite well. Arda Güler in the second half, I thought he played well. He was, much better than at Anfield. There was something about that Anfield match that I had the impression that maybe the match was just a little bit too big for him. I mean, look, he's a wonderful player, and I have no doubt he's a rock star, and he's going to be amazing. But he hasn't, he's a very young kid. He hasn't played a lot of massive matches. Like really, really big matches. And when you show up at Anfield, I mean, and you're young, you can feel that kind of pressure. And I do think that maybe that has something to do with the way he played against Liverpool. I thought his passing was really sloppy, and he just felt a little bit like a fish out of water. This performance tonight was much better. So I was very encouraged to see Arda kind of just playing with a lot more flow, a lot more comfortable, and a lot more accuracy than at Anfield. Okay, obviously the person we need to discuss is Kylian. Okay, now Kylian, like I say, he scored, of all the chances he had, and he had a ton, he scored the hardest one. Like I say, there was a huge sense of relief, and you could see it in Kylian, and you could feel it in the stadium. We all want him to pass this phase. Look, he's going through a tricky period. We're all very frustrated by it because, we know he's a wonderful player, but it's just nothing seems to be working. But it was a huge relief to see him score tonight. It would have been wonderful if, he could have scored one of the other 4 or 5 clear chances that he had. But I do think that this is psychological. I think that, the magnitude of this club sometimes does weigh on players. And every successive match that you go without performing well, the pressure builds more and more, and it gets more and more in your head. And I think it kind of snowballed in the case of Kylian. And we're now at a point where it's just, I can't even imagine what's going on. It's like he's missing things that are inexplicable. But I do think that today was a step in the right direction, because the goal that he scored today, not a penalty, but in the flow of play, I think this is going to be very good for his confidence, to settle down a little bit. And the crowd behind him, I think, was very important. He just needs to get these cobwebs out of his head, and I think we'll hopefully soon see the Kylian that we all know, and the player that we've seen for the last few years. So, look, Kylian missed a lot of screamers again today, especially the one-on-ones against the goalkeeper. I have no idea how he's missing these, but I think the goal tonight will help, and I think all the applause from the crowd will help. To just sort of calm his nerves, and get him to a better place mentally. But anyway, like I say, look, in conclusion, this was not a spectacular performance, but I think it was positive in many ways. I think we can, all sort of take a deep breath, and I think it was kind of therapeutic in the sense that we needed a solid match with the 3 points, and to just kind of change the vibes a little bit, especially after the night at Anfield. So I'm encouraged. Like I say, 1 point behind Barca, and if we beat Valencia, we'll be 2 points clear. But it's kind of shocking that we'd be in this position, considering how poorly we've been playing this season. But again, I think this was therapeutic. I think it's a step in the right direction. And as the key players come back from their injuries, hopefully we'll continue to improve from here. But anyway, listen, those are my thoughts. Just wanted to make sure I got this out before I left. But thank you for joining me. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I love reading your comments, so please do that. But thanks for joining me, as always. Love you guys. And as always, a la Madrid.